Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first installment of our webinar series for 2026. My name is Sonia Bigelow Smith, and I serve as the director of the Capital Readiness Program. If you have participated and or graduated from any of our prior programs, please put a 1 in the chat and let us know that you're here. But if you are new to our Capital Readiness Program, please say hello and tell us where you're dialing in from. So let's get started with a few logistics. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all registrants within 24 hours. As we move along, if you have a question, please place the question in the Q&A box so that my teammate, Claudia Barrera, can retrieve as many of those questions as possible. And we want to make sure that we get to as many of those as we can. Without delay, let me begin by sharing our why for this session. Since our inception, we have welcomed over 500 business owners to our family, graduating nearly 300 from our programs. And the overwhelming question that we have received, besides needing marketing support, undoubtedly has been about how do I prepare myself to secure a grant. So we are addressing that question today. I have the pleasure of introducing our guest presenter, Artlesia Bibbs, who serves as the principal consultant and grant strategist of Artlesia Bibbs Consulting. And let me just share a bit about her track record. She has secured funding and federal contracts for over 78% of submitted proposals, totaling more than $100 million, including securing $27 million in less than 12 months. She works very strategically with her clients, aligning the funding opportunities with agency priorities, aligning funding opportunities with community needs, and considering your operational capacity. And lastly, she provides, and this is probably one thing that a lot of folks don't really take in consideration, is that she provides technical assistance, budget oversight, and post-award support to ensure that program fidelity and fiscal accountability are in place. Artlesia, if you could join me on camera. Let's welcome you. So, Artlesia, I gave them a little bit about your background, about your track record. We're very, very happy to have you. And I don't know if you heard, but one of the things that I shared with the group is that the reason why we're having this session is because since our inception, one of the overwhelming questions that we received was about securing grants and securing funding. And I've been impressed with your background and your accomplishments and would like to turn this over to you to step our guests through your grant success journey, but also some of the helpful hints and tips. So I'll turn it over to you and let you get going, and then we will address questions at the end. Thank you, Artlesia. I'm turning the room over to you.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure that I'm back at the first slide. Are we here?
Yes, we have the show me the money.
So good morning. Okay, fantastic. Good morning, everyone. I want to apologize. I made every effort to make sure I was in a strong signal. So today we want to talk a little bit about my success journey with regard to grants writing and administration. As a grant writer, I've had over 30 years of experience in doing this particular type of work. I started out in this field as a grant administrator with the Centers for Disease Control some 30 years ago, where we actually process the grants as they come in. That experience, of course, led us into doing this work where we're receiving the grant applications, processing them, understanding how the government actually reviews those grants and gets the grants out to reviewers, how the rubrics are created, why those different aspects of the process are important, and getting that information out to reviewers from the grantees when they come in, and get those out to reviewers and have those grants reviewed, scored, and then send out the award letters. So that's kind of how I came into this work. Over the years, of course, I've become an expert. After you've reviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of grants and processed thousands and thousands of grants, I started writing grants. I've also served as, I'm an artist as well. And so I've written grants for myself personally, also for other organizations. So we're just happy to be here today and to share a little bit about this journey. Why grant readiness matters. Competition is fierce. Most organizations don't take the time to prepare themselves to get ready for the grant, which is one of the reasons why this organization is so important, because they can assist the potential grantee in preparing so they have all of their documents, all of their background, all of the tools and things that they need to be prepared, because competition in this environment, but always, is a very competitive process. And we want to make sure that organizations are prepared and that they stand out. And the way that you do that is by preparing first. So first impressions count. Funders make quick decisions, and your professionalism and your credibility from the very start is very important. And time is money. Getting grants ready means that you've taken the time to prepare. And then, I'm sorry, the host is, okay, I'm sorry. I got distracted with something on the screen. Um, you can act quickly when opportunities come around, because sometimes grants, when they're announced, you may have 30 days, sometimes you may have 2 weeks, depending on the organization, to be responsive. So getting your background together, your project plans together, and understanding what your goals, and matching your potential goals and desires and needs for your community, your business, actually is responsive to what the goals and mission are for the organization. And sometimes we don't do a great job at that. What we're going to cover today: the core elements of grant readiness. You're going to walk away with understanding the fundamentals of the building blocks of every organization needs in order to pursue a grant. We're going to discuss aligning your mission with funders. I kind of spoke to that a little bit, but learn how to identify and connect with funders whose priorities match your work. You're going to identify and address any gaps. We're going to discover common weaknesses in applications and how to strengthen your proposal. We're going to discuss finding the right grants and exploring proven resources and strategies for discovering those funding opportunities. The essential concepts for grant readiness would be having a clear mission and a vision, a compelling, concise statement who shares what your goals, your mission, and how you plan to change your community, or how it's going to impact your organization. You need to have a solid financial foundation, updating all of your financial statements, your budget, and your accounting system, making sure that it is accurate. Any of your audits, any of those kinds of documents, that you have those updated and ready for review before you attempt to go after a grant. A proven track record. You want to make sure that your past performance, right, your past successes, your impact, and testimonials regarding the effectiveness of your programs should be part of your grant. Organizational capability. The right team, the right systems, and infrastructure is what's going to ensure that you're successful in managing and implementing the funds once you receive them. So being able to communicate that from the very beginning is very important. Common pitfalls to avoid. Weak program statements. Failing to clearly articulate the specific problem that you're solving with a compelling answer to that, the data and evidence is very important. Unrealistic budgets. Underestimating your cost or proposing budgets that don't align with the proposed activities and outcomes is a game killer. um, Generic applications, using a one size fits all proposals instead of tailoring your approach to each funder's priority. Remember, funders can spot a rush application immediately. Take the time, significant time, and that will increase your rate of success and help you to avoid pitfalls. Align your mission with the funder's priority. So research thoroughly, study your funder websites, annual reports, and past grantees to understand their true priorities and their values. I want to I'm going to get into this one a little bit more. So when we start talking about research thoroughly, so let's say, for example, that you wanted to fund a faith-based organization. I think it may be one or two here that are part of this. When you identify whatever the organization, whether it's the Mellon Foundation, whether it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, whether it's some other funding organization, you want to go to their websites. You want to take a look at an annual report. That's going to be for any of the foundations or philanthropist organizations. You definitely want to look at their past grantees. You want to identify what have they funded before and how much did they fund them for. So you can kind of get a gauge on what's going to work for your proposal and not, right? You want to find the connection. You want to identify where your mission naturally intersects with what the funder wants to achieve in the community, and speak their language. Frame your proposal using terminology and outcomes that resonate with the funder and their stated goals. That's going to be key when you're tying your goals and missions for your project directly into the rubrics. When you're coming up with your responses, you want to make sure that it ties directly into the rubric, and that rubric is going to tie directly into the mission of that particular funding source. Strengthening your application. You want to conduct a readiness assessment. Honestly, evaluate your organization's capability, the documentation that you have, and your track record against common grant requirements in order to ensure that you are in a position where you can meet the minimum requirements in order to apply, because sometimes you'll think that your program fits perfectly, but let's say, for example, some organizations don't allow for-profit businesses to apply. So if you're a for-profit business and that's not part of the eligibility requirement, then you need to kind of be able to make those assessments early on. You want to build your grant toolkit. Assemble your materials, your mission statement, your financial documents, your program descriptions, your impact data, and board information. You want to have all of those things ready so that when you apply for your grant, that it's gonna, your impact data, the people that have participated in your programs in the past, and say program evaluations. Those kinds of things are key in order to make sure that you reach the threshold of success. Strengthen your internal systems. You should invest in an accounting system and accounting software so that you can track your data. You want to make sure that you have staff development and demonstrate organizational sustainability. Par for course for this work is making sure that you can demonstrate that you're financially solvent, that you're ready to get the money when the money comes in, that you're going to be able to dispense those funds effectively, and then that you can report back to the funding source through your accounting system and that data, how the money was utilized and how many people were impacted by your project. You want to document your impact again, creating a compelling narrative, collect the quantitative data that will improve your programs and create a meaningful change in your community or in your corporation. Resources for finding grants. So there are tons of organizations that are online that will provide you. Here I've listed grants.gov. There are also many foundations that have directories online. There are also other organizations called Grant Watch, where you can discover federal, state, and private funding tailored to your sector. Uh, Again, when you start looking at grants.gov, that's going to be the grants that are going to be funded, obviously, by the federal government. You still have those same capabilities within the state as well. Community foundations. Connect with local community foundations in your capital region that understands the needs and supports of grassroots organizations like the one that we're here with today. And of course, professional networks. The Minority Business Council is here to support you with that. But also you want to leverage connections with maybe the Chamber of Commerce, other industry associations, and organizations in the capital region that will help further your grant through. Um, Grant workshops. Oh, I'm sorry. There are also grant workshops that we take place as well. Um, that will provide you with additional information for upcoming funding opportunities and that will help connect you with funders. Attend those training sessions. You'll be surprised at tidbits and information that comes out from those. So your next step for grant success, and I want to apologize. I feel like I'm a little off kilter because wasn't able to I was on and then we got off, but we want to complete your grant readiness assessment. We're going to, as we get through some of the questions that we have, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can make sure that you stand out and identify specific areas that you need to improve when you start going through your grant readiness assessment. We can assist you with establishing kind of a toolkit of grant readiness so that you'll have, whether it's your all of your financial data, whether you've gotten all your taxes submitted, all of those kinds of things are important. Your last 3 years of taxes, your last 3 months of your bank statements. There are some funders that require that kind of information because they want to ensure that you're a solvent business. You want to create an action plan. You want to set specific timelines for gathering your information for your grant submission. So when you establish that once you decide that you're going to apply, you want to really come up with an action plan so that you can also have your letters of support. All of these different aspects of the grant process, you want to make sure that you lay it out in your plan and then be able to have a quick checklist so that you can go back and verify and make sure that you've responded as you should. Also, we want you to start small. Oftentimes grant writers, you go in and you want to get the big grant. Some organizations will allow you to start off with maybe one of their smaller grants first. So let's say that, for example, the Department of Agriculture has a program called the School to Farm to School program. And so that particular grant, it was for $500,000 just to help farmers coordinate with schools to get their produce into the school system and sell their produce to the school system. So the first level of that grant, though, is not for you to go get that $500,000. So they had a small toolkit. So you might get the $50,000 grant first so they can help you walk through that process. And then when you go back the next year, you can get the $500,000 to kind of really go in and implement the full program. So not all grants are like that, but often there are how do you say, levels to funding within organizations, especially big groups like the Mellon Foundation, Kellogg Foundation. Those groups will have some entry-level type grant opportunities that you can go after, and then you can go after some of their larger things, and you will show your track record that you've had success with managing the smaller grants first. So I want to thank you. I think this kind of concludes the general information that I wanted to provide. And I know we had some questions. Again, I want to apologize. I feel like I kind of rushed through that and off
Yeah,
kilter a bit, but I think if we get through these questions that were pre-submitted, Claudia, I think that we're going to answer most of the questions that people may have regarding the process.
and Arlesia, before we move on to the questions, let me just say thank you. And we extend grace to our business owners and our business leaders. So we certainly understand when challenges present themselves, but I'm appreciative that you came back and stayed the course. So thank you so very much. And I told you to get some water. Make sure you had some
You
water
did.
just in case. So before we get to the questions, as we prepare for those, I am going to ask my question again because I understand that the chat was disabled. For
Oh,
those of you who have graduated from one of our programs, please put a 1 in the chat for us. Let's see if we got any folks out there who have graduated. Yes, I see Jaquette, Basile, Tasha May, quite a few folks, Anita, Kate. Thank you very much. And if you are new and have not graduated from one of our programs or participated, just send us a little note, say hello, and tell us where you're dialing in from. And then we will get prepared for questions. Claudia, I am going to turn it over to you. I would like to thank our uh, uh, folks that dialed in today because there were some questions that were submitted in advance. And just like a grant writer and a grant strategist would do, she went ahead and started preparing the responses for those questions that were submitted. So we're going to start with those. Claudia, if you could read off those for Arlesia, and then if anyone else has any questions beyond the ones that we'll go through, please put them in the Q&A box. Do not put them in the chat. Put them in the Q&A box so that we can track those and we can respond if we need to, if there's something we've got to follow through up on and come back to you. So I will turn it over to you, Claudia, in the background. If you could call out the first question for Arlesia. Thank you so much.
Yes, sure. So the first question is, are for-profit companies eligible for grants?
absolutely. Our for-profit companies are eligible for grants, and that eligibility depends entirely on the specific funding source and program. Many federal grants exclude for-profit businesses, but state, local, and corporate grants often include them, especially for innovation, workforce development, and small business growth. So how grant eligibility works for a for-profit group. And I want to talk about that a little bit because that's key to this to the constituents here. Federal grants are mostly restrictive, right? Federal grants listed in grants.gov, again, is most all federal grants, not all, but the vast majority of them are processed through grants.gov. And they're often designed for nonprofits, governments, and educational institutions. However, some federal programs do allow for-profit applicants, especially in areas of research, technology, economic development. Eligibility always depends on the specific notice of funding, and that's going to come out in grants.gov. Now, for state and local grants, they're more accessible, right? Many states and cities offer grants to small businesses to support job creation, downtown revitalization and innovation, and minority business development. So you want to make sure that you check out your local government and state governments. So for example, the city of Bowie has a lot of grants that come out that you may not be aware of that if you're a resident of Bowie, Maryland. So that's just one example. Baltimore City has tons of grants that come out. So again, you want to look at Maryland as a state, or Virginia, DC, depending on which area you're calling from or participating from. But these are often easier for for-profit companies to access than federal grants. The third area is going to be corporate and foundation grants. They're very common for for-profits, right? And corporate giving programs and private foundations frequently offer grants to small businesses. Databases like the Grant Portal shows thousands of active small business grants available at any time. Now, the next thing that I want to just add to that is industry-specific grants. For-profit companies are often eligible in sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, technology and innovation, energy, creative creative industries, whether it's the arts, humanities, and then also workforce development. They're going to have for-profit grants available. Small business innovation grants. These are federal research types grants that are specific for-profit small businesses. They're highly competitive, but powerful for companies in developing new technologies. So for a quick checklist for for-profit businesses, a for-profit company is more likely to qualify if it serves a public benefit, like jobs, innovation, community impact. Is it a small business, per SBA size standards? Is it registered and in good standing? It has to have a clear project with measurable outcomes, and it meets an industry or a local requirement. So that's the answer to, in general, if for-profit companies are eligible for grants. Next question.
Okay,
Yeah,
that would
and
be
Claudia, while you're loading, pulling the next question, let me just ask one question from,
Okay.
or at least, yeah, someone had put in the chat, they had a question about a rubric. And you mentioned that several times throughout your presentation. Can you just mention, I'm used to rubrics when it comes to a school setting. Is that similar in the form as far as grants are concerned?
So what is a rubric? A rubric is
Yes.
a scoring tool that the reviewer is going to review when they're looking at your application. So there's a pre-qualifying, list of missions, statements, goals, objectives that the funder wants to ensure that you cover, right? And then they're going to weigh that. So that's what the rubric is. It's the weight that they give to each one of your questions that you're responding to, that you're answering, or community, wherever there's a void. But that's how the rubric is how they judge. It's a scoring sheet primarily, but it's that scale that you will see that. And every grant has a rubric because the panelists have to use the rubric in order to review your grant. And that's how they
Got it.
weigh their
Okay.
response.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Claudia, I'll pitch it to you for the next question.
sure. What is the best way to pivot business operations in current resource environments?
That's a fantastic question. So, a smart pivot in this environment is to not abandon your core identity, right? It's about tightening your focus, shifting to where the demand actually is, and building resilience in your operation. The businesses that are thriving right now are the ones that pivoted with intention, right? You have to be clear with, and this is strategically how I would think about it. Shift toward what already is working, right? Instead of reinventing anything or amplifying parts, I would amplify parts of your business that generate revenue fastest, require the least overhead, have the strongest customer pull, align with current economic realities, value, confidence, and trust. Added value is something that I'm hearing a lot in this environment right now. So it's really to tighten the core and trim the access. And then I think that that's how I would move. That's number one strategy. Number two, add a revenue stream that solves a current pain point in our current environment, right? And right now, customers and communities are prioritizing affordability, convenience, local sourcing, skills training, cultural connection, wellness and stress relief, experiences over products, right? A pivot that meets one of these needs, I think will land well. The next thing would be turn your expertise into a service or a system. Many businesses are stabilizing cash flow by offering workshops, consulting, digital products, licensing their own methods, and a subscription base. You know, we have so many things now where people can access you by subscribing to your services, right? And if you have a process that works, you might want to try to package it that way. The other thing you can do this pivot is to strengthen your community value. People spend where they feel seen. This climate rewards businesses that tell a compelling story, show cultural resilience, build trust, offer community benefit, create experiences, and not just transactions, right? This is especially powerful for heritage, food, art, and wellness brands. I would reduce operational drag. A pivot is all about removing what drains you, right? So how high cost inventory, I would stabilize that. Low margin services, unreliable partners, we can't afford that at this time, inefficient processes, and outdated marketing channels. Those would be, I would lean our operations more to innovate, right? More room to innovate. The other thing that I would do would be to pivot is build partnerships instead of doing everything alone. The fastest pivots happen when you have shared spaces, co-branding events, vendor collaborations, cross promotions, and local business or nonprofit partnerships will assist you. Local governments and nonprofits will assist you. This reduces costs and increases visibility. Number seven, I would reposition your brand for the moment. Sometimes the pivot is simply reframing what you already do, from luxury to heritage, from product to experience, from business to community hub, from service to solution. So when you shift in language, you can open up new markets. So let me just kind of go over those again quickly. A simple pivot framework that you can use today would be step one, identify your strongest asset. What do people come to you for without you pushing? Step two, identify the current market need. What are people struggling with right now? And what do your skills or products, how do they solve those struggles? Number three, build a bridge between the two. That bridge is your pivot. And number four, test small. Pivot with a small group, refine, and then scale. Some of the things that this group that we can help you with that is that we can help you tailor a pivot direction. We can help you identify potential or brainstorm or potential new revenue streams out of your current business. We can assist you with coming up with a 90-day action plan for something like that. And then messaging that fits the current climate is really, really important. So those are the things that I would say about pivoting at this time. Next
Okay.
question.
Okay, there's a question in the chat. I have a for-profit business, and you mentioned that federal grants are usually for nonprofits, but there are ways for for-profits to get them. So the question is, in the grant description for federal grants, will it say that they make exceptions for for-profits that meet the qualifications you mentioned?
No. So there's what you call an eligibility requirements for all grants, right? And so the eligibility requirement will say especially for government, it's from the at the very top, it'll say for profit, nonprofit. It will list the type of business that can actually qualify for the grant. Now, that doesn't say all you have to do is go and partner with a nonprofit to get some of those federal grants. But if you go back and listen to the recording, I gave a few areas where for-profit businesses become eligible even in the federal marketplace sometimes. But again, you have to take a look at what those are. And they're typically based on industry. So we're talking like, for example, agriculture. That's an easy one because, of course, a farmer is a for-profit business and they have grants available in that ecosystem, right? So, so that's an example where there are grants available. So even IT companies, the federal government may fund a research study on something. So it's a misnomer that federal grants are not available through federal government, but you just have to watch the eligibility requirement, know what industry you're in, and then you come up with a strategy on how you can assess those funds. I hope I answered that.
Yeah,
Okay.
or at least, yeah, I was going to say, and we'll let Claudia give you one more question, and then I have a final question before we close up.
Okay.
I will say you can tell that she's a grant strategist because of how she's responding to these questions with very, very, very much detail. So, Claudia, if you could, and ask the next question. Thanks.
How can we reach out to our pool of potential donors from our database in a way that will spark their interest?
Okay. I did. Okay. Let me find out because you skipped. Um, I did prepare for these, as you can see. Give me 2 seconds.
And we can go to another one, Claudia, because we can provide the written responses to these.
Yeah.
Is there anything available to make sure our businesses are set up properly so when we apply for the grants, we're squared away?
Absolutely. So again, this group, we plan to assist you with establishing a grant readiness assessment, self-check tool, right? So we want to make sure that your legal structure is set up correctly, that your compliance status is accurate. In other words, you're in good standing with government, that your project clarity is important. And before we get off, I want to make sure that you understand you need to have a very clear narrative about what you're going to do with the money, right? It's a very competitive process. Being vague in how you're going to spend the money and execute programs is a killer when you're coming in. So funders like to check things quietly in the background. So having your profit and loss statements together. These are things that I'm sure that Sonia works with you guys on all the time, is working with getting these cash flow projections and budget narratives. You'll be surprised having a full understanding about what it is you're trying to do, the time frame that you're doing it, and where you are with your business right now is very important. A lot of times people jump out and want to get a grant, but you don't have your house in order, right? So we want to help you get your house in order, make sure you have all your documents together, and then you can start looking at how you can start implementing these grants or going after some of these grants. And And so that's how you want to, I highly recommend establishing a grant readiness checklist so that when you're pursuing these opportunities, you're very clear. So I think that's how I would respond to that.
Yeah, thank you, Arlesia and Claudia. We'll close with the questions that you've submitted so far because I did have one last question before we close for the afternoon. And Arlesia, I think you kind of addressed this with that last response. Business owners, we talk to them all the time. We've seen over 500 clients through our doors in the last 2 years with a variety of different problems and challenges. And one of the things that I know that you've seen because you've been working very distinctly with a business owner specifically, you check their operational capacity. If you were to win this $500,000 grant, do you have boots on the ground, or can you secure boots on the ground, or can you team to actually execute? So my question is this: with a business owner who is loaded, and I do mean a lot of our business owners are wearing multiple different hats. They're working on their primary source of revenue for their business, but there probably are some secondary and tertiary sources of revenue. What are your top 3 pitfalls that you see that most business owners, when they're coming to you to work with you, that it's getting them in or not giving them the best probability of success to securing a grant? What are some of those 3 top pitfalls or challenges you would say?
I would say poor planning from the beginning and starting too late to respond. Like,
Okay.
right. So, give yourself 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months to go after a grant. So, or a contract opportunity so that you're prepared, right? You've done your research, you have your letters of support. That's another thing. Oftentimes these grants, you don't take the time to get the community support that's needed. That happens a lot. It's whether it's a community type grant or it's a corporate grant, you still need to have letters of support that show to the funding organization that you have credibility. So that's why you want to have these kinds of things. Not having a budget narrative to support your budget is something that's a pitfall that people, it's very easy to fix that. Oftentimes, another pitfall is people don't stay within the size standard of the response. So so now with grants, it's a little bit better because you have used to be that we had page numbers, like you can't go over a certain page number or they're not going to review anything past this page number. Now, with most of these grants, you're going into a grant portal and you're just inputting your information into a portal. So the way I feel that you can successfully do that, and because I come from a federal government management background, right, management consulting background, I do everything like it's a project. And when I establish things in a project component, it's got a separate budget, it's got a separate staffing. Everything is set up just to support that particular activity. And then it ties into our larger budget. But when you set your business up that way, it works a lot easier for you when you're starting to try to look for funding, because what you're doing is you've established a project. So for example, the person's project may be they needed to get some software, right, to update their operations. There are grants available for that. I think that was a question that came from one of the businesses. So there are grants that are available for that. So the project is we want to improve our operations, and we need the software in order to do it. Here's the software. You got to be able to provide them with the why, right? And so I think that's those are some of the pitfalls that I think that people need to.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that and for going off course a little bit to answer that question, because I think a lot of times, people want to know how do they best prepare. We are, so Alicia, thank you once again for your perseverance, first of all, your patience, and for joining us today to share some of your insight thoughts about how do you prepare and how do you increase your probability of success when it comes to grants. We know that a lot of business owners are looking at grant opportunities, as a component of their capital stack versus, I'm just going after grants. It's a debt-free way to move your business forward. And so that was one of, like I said, behind marketing, that was one of the biggest questions that we had for the year 2025, and we wanted to kick off 2026 addressing that question. So to everyone, go ahead. Did you want to mention something? No.
There was one more thing I wanted to mention. Matching funds.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Matching fund is very significant. And so you may be looking at a potential opportunity. There's a small business. He's looking to expand the business, and he needs to literally add a physical space onto the business because of where it's geographically located. There's some state money available to assist in that, which is not often available. So sometimes, like for example, DC is a great example. They used to have the Great Street Initiative, right? Some of you businesses are on this call may be aware of the Great Street Initiative, where DC was given, back in the day, it was like $80,000 to businesses as long as you had a 2-year lease in the city. In that particular portion of the city where they were trying to revitalize, you could get some money, right, to execute. Well, nowadays, just that one lump of money is not always, they want you to have some skin in the game. What's your matching funds, right? Do you have money set aside to do this? What we got to realize is, and I have to tell people, government is not here to help us fulfill our dreams. That's not, but they will assist us in fulfilling a need in the community.
Right.
Right. So they don't usually finance something to help you be the greatest version of you. That's not really how it's designed, right? We would love that. I do think that we're going to have there will be some change in that. For example, because of the tariffs that are now in place here in the United States, you're going to start seeing some grant money available. Why? Because we don't manufacture our stuff anymore, right? So the government is going to start funding manufacturing projects. And that's going to be dependent on, it'll be based on your industry, right? But those is going to be some of the things, but be ready, because they may say, do you have some money? How much money do you have to go towards this project that you're trying to produce? And we'll match those funds. That's something that's kind of, it's always been there, but it's very prevailing.
Yeah, so that's word to the wise. So we're right at 1:56, and although we had a delay earlier, thank you everyone. Like I shared in the beginning, and we'll close here. So thank you, Alicia, so much. We will send the recording to you within 48 hours. You will receive that. And then we'll also make sure that we send out a questionnaire just to get some feedback from you all about this particular webinar. I would like to personally thank everyone for your participation today, for staying with us. We certainly hope you gained some insight. And as a reminder, we are here as a resource. We've got programming cohorts running every single month. We have webinars that are going to be executed every single month. And what we want to make sure that you know, that if you have a sizable grant that you are preparing for over the next 3 months, just think about kind of what you're looking at. Please send us an email with some details. And Claudia, if you could put hellocrp@crmsdc.org in the chat, send us an email and tell us what you're looking at, because we want to align Arlesia with some of our business owners where she can extend some additional support as it relates to procuring a grant this year. We are evaluating how we can further support our business owners across the region who want to add grant awards to their capital stack. So if you have your eye on something or you're in the midst of preparing something, send us that email and give us a little bit of detail. And then what we'll do is schedule a discovery call with our leasing owner so we can ask some more specific questions to see how we can certainly support you. Again, thank you, and be on the lookout for the registration for our next webinar. Next month, we're going to have a session called the Collect the Cash Playbook. If anyone out there are business owners and you've got outstanding invoices and you need to make sure that you're securing those funds because it helps with your cash flow and your bottom line, you don't want to miss the session that we're having next month. So with that, I will close. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the first session of our Capital Readiness installment for 2026. We hope you have a great afternoon and be on the lookout for the recording. Have a good day.